The Consumer Price Index just hit 330.293 in March 2026. That is not a typo. That single number means the average basket of goods and services that cost $100 in the base period now costs over $330. And the trend is still moving in the wrong direction for anyone hoping inflation is finally dead. This is not a soft landing celebration. This is a warning sign, and the data is screaming it. Let me show you exactly what is happening and what it means for your money right now. The headline CPI reading of 330.293 for March 2026 is up from 327.460 in February and 326.588 in January. That is a jump of nearly 3 full index points in a single month, the sharpest monthly move in recent data. Go back to April 2025, and the reading was 320.302. That means, in roughly 11 months, the CPI has climbed almost 10 full points. People keep saying inflation is cooling. The index keeps climbing. Those two things cannot both be true at the same time without some very careful framing. Now let's look at core inflation. That is, the CPI stripping out food and energy, the number the Federal Reserve watches most closely because it is harder to manipulate with one-time commodity swings. The core CPI, tracked as CPI LFESL, came in at 334.165 for March 2026. That is up from 333.512 in February and 332.793 in January. Core inflation is also accelerating on a month-over-month basis. Back in April 2025, core CPI sat at 326.467. It has added nearly 8 full points since then. The Fed's 2% annual inflation target is not being met. The data is clear on that. So what is the Federal Reserve actually doing about it? The Fed funds rate has been locked at 3.64% since January 2026. It was 3.64 in February, 3.64 in March, and 3.64 in April. Before that, it was 3.72 in December 2025, 3.88 in November, 4.09 in October, and 4.22 in September. The Fed has been cutting slowly, and it has now paused, with CPI at 330.293 and core CPI at 334.165, and both still trending upward month over month. The case for additional rate cuts in the near term is extremely thin. The market has been pricing in cuts. The data is pushing back hard against that narrative. And here is where it gets personal for millions of Americans. The 30-year fixed mortgage rate as of May 7, 2026, is 6.37%. That is, up from 6.30 the week before, and up from 6.23 the week before that. Earlier in the spring, it briefly touched 5.98% on February 26th, the lowest reading in the recent dataset, and it has been climbing ever since. A buyer financing a $400,000 home at 5.98% versus 6.37% pays roughly $100 more per month. That is over $200 per year. That is the real-world cost of this inflation data not cooperating.
The housing market is getting squeezed from both sides.
Home prices remain elevated. Mortgage rates refuse to fall in any sustained way, and the inflation data that would give the Fed permission to cut more aggressively is simply not there.
Here is the key tension everyone needs to understand.
The Fed funds rate at 3.64% is meaningfully below where it was at the peak of this hiking cycle. But inflation, both headline at 330.293 and core at 334.165, is still rising in absolute index terms every single month. The Fed is in a bind. Cut rates and risk re-accelerating inflation. Hold rates and keep pressure on the housing market, on consumer credit, on business borrowing. There is no clean exit here. The grocery store aisle tells the same story the index does. Prices are not falling. They are rising more slowly than they were at the peak. But they are still rising. The CPI, going from 320.302 in April 2025 to 330.293 in March 2026, is not disinflation in any meaningful sense for the average household. It is still inflation. It is still compounding on top of the 20+% cumulative price increases that hit between 2021 and 2023. So what does this mean for your portfolio and your financial decisions right now? First, do not expect rate cuts to rescue the housing market anytime soon. With mortgage rates at 6.37% and inflation data still hot, the Fed has no political or economic cover to move aggressively.
Second,
Cash and short-duration bonds still offer real returns, with the Fed funds rate at 3.64%. Do not abandon that positioning prematurely. Third, equities that benefit from pricing power. Companies that can pass inflation along to consumers remain structurally advantaged in this environment. The companies that cannot raise prices are the ones getting squeezed. Watch the earnings data for margin compression signals. The March 2026 CPI report at 330.293 is not a green light. It is not confirmation that the inflation fight is won. It is a reminder that the data, not the narrative, not the Fed's press conferences, not the market's wishful thinking, is what drives outcomes. The data right now says inflation is still running, the Fed is on hold, mortgage rates are climbing again, and your purchasing power is still under pressure. That is the honest read of these numbers. Stay data-driven. The next CPI print will tell us whether March was an acceleration or an anomaly. Either way, you now have the full picture.